Greetings, everyone. Hope all of you are having an absolutely fantastic day. By now, many of you already know that Cassia is probably the strongest party member in the game, and Argenta is probably the best damage dealer in the game, and that a lot of you can just give Argenta extra turns and let her absolutely mow down all of the enemies in your path. But some of you might not like that playstyle. Some of you might just prefer to give your big bruiser the biggest piece of armor you can find and the biggest two-handed weapon you can give him and let him just run into a group of enemies and go to town. If that's your preferred playstyle, Abelard might potentially be for you. So I'm going to go ahead and provide a build with that type of playstyle in mind. Let's go ahead and get into it. So first and foremost, he comes with melter weapon proficiency, which is interesting. You could potentially give him heavy melter weapons. I personally don't recommend it, since if you're holding a ranged weapon, you're not going to be able to do attacks of opportunity, and therefore enemies could just walk right past you, which kind of defeats the purpose of having a tank, but the option is there for you. And then he also has the field medic talent, which means even though he's not going to start with a particularly high medici score, he's still going to be able to use medikits, and he's going to gain an additional amount of wounds equal to his toughness bonus when he uses medikits. Very, very nice. Now he also is from an Imperial world, so he has a Humanity's Finest bonus that is put into toughness as well. So you can already see a lot of what he has on his character revolves around him being a tank. Now he's also a Navy officer. That's his origin, and that means he comes with the Brace for Impact feature. For one round, he and his allies in a 3-cell radius will gain +2 deflection for each archetype taken by him. So of course this can go up to +4, and they cannot be forcefully moved or over penetrated, but he can only use this once per combat. It can be activated for 0 action points, so it's all right. Definitely nice to have in a difficult situation. All right, that's all of his features, so let's get into his archetype. And of course, he starts as a warrior, which means he gets charged. This allows him to move in a straight line for up to, I believe, 6 cells, and then he'll make a melee attack at the end of the charge. Keep in mind, you do not have to use charge on an enemy. You can instead just charge into a square and use it as a way to position Abelard exactly where you want him to be. But of course, it's preferable to attack when available. Regardless, charge is absolutely fantastic for any warrior. Now after that, you get to choose his skill, and I highly recommend you specialize in athletics. You want someone who has this because it's a ship post, and there are multiple situations out in the environment where being able to use athletics to move things or jump over spaces is going to be very useful. So it's great to have someone who can specialize here, and it makes sense to use it for someone who's a frontline fighter. On the next level, he's going to get the Endure talent. Until his next turn, all incoming damage is reduced by his toughness bonus, and he's going to gain temporary wounds equal to his toughness bonus. You're pretty much going to want to activate this on every single turn, especially when Abelard is surrounded by enemies. It's going to help to ensure he's able to stay on his feet, even in really tough situations. And then next you have Daring Breach, which is the heroic act for warriors. It's going to allow him to immediately restore all action and movement points, and he's going to gain movement points equal to his agility bonus until the end of that turn. He also doesn't lose movement points after performing attacks, and he has no limit on melee attacks that turn. This is an absolutely fantastic heroic act, probably the third best one behind soldier and officer, but definitely you'll basically want to activate this all the time, and then you'll also want to place the heroic act from officer onto him to give him that 1-2 punch where he's able to repeatedly do attacks every turn and use his movement points as long as he likes every single turn as well. Just absolutely great stuff. For your first talent, I take Clenched Teeth. The warrior is going to gain toughness bonus damage deflection against the first attack made by every enemy this combat. Once again, it's going to do a lot to help protect you in those tough fights. For your second talent, I would take Contempt. Whenever an enemy attacks the warrior's next melee attack against that enemy deals an additional 5 damage. This doesn't stack, but it can be reactivated after another attack. So definitely, your toughness bonus is going to be sky high, so you're going to want to have this. Next, you could choose your characteristic for the first time. Obviously, we're going to start with toughness. We want our toughness bonus to be as high as possible. When toughness isn't available, we'll switch over to weapon skill to help ensure that our melee attacks actually connect. And then finally, if there's no other options, we'll go ahead and pick up strength. Agility isn't worth it because we're going to be wearing heavy armor, so we're not going to benefit from dodge really at all. And we don't need high initiative because we're going to use officers to give us extra turns early, so it's not necessary for us to go early in the turn rotation. All right, and then you get your first ability. I would take Taunting Scream. The warrior screams at their enemies to draw their attention and become a priority target, which means enemies will attack you first. This is absolutely what we want for our tank, so we'll go ahead and pick it up. For your first common talent, I would take Combat Master, which ensures that enemies do not gain melee superiority bonuses against you. Obviously, you're going to be surrounded most of the time. It's absolutely critical that you pick this up. On the next level, you can't increase athletics anymore, so I would go ahead and increase Medicae. It's going to help his medikits to heal more damage, which in turn is going to make him more self-sufficient, so to me it just makes sense. And then on the next level, take Thick Skin. It's going to increase your damage deflection by 1, and your parry chance is going to be increased by 25% of your total armor, which should be a pretty significant amount. And as you'll see when we get into our next archetype, you really want parry to be as high as possible. For your first Daring Breach upgrade, I would take the second option. Until the end of combat, you're going to gain 4 movement points for each kill and may use movement points after attacking or using abilities. And then for your next talent, take Disarm. When you use a single melee attack against a target, you're going to gain an armor percentage bonus equal to 5 plus twice your toughness bonus against attacks made by that target for 1 round. Absolutely fantastic against bosses. On the next level, you can't increase toughness anymore, so switch over to weapon skill. And then for your next ability, take Sworn Enemy. You can mark a target and it allows you to get a percentage bonus to armor equal to 10 plus twice your toughness bonus. You're also going to get additional damage on melee attacks against that target equal to 2 plus your strength bonus. If the target attacks you during that round, you're also going to gain 1 action point, but this only happens once per round. Again, this is absolutely fantastic against enemies you know it's going to take a little bit longer for you to take out, such as bosses or elites. And then for your common talent, take It Will Not Die, which increases your wounds by half of your character's level, rounded up. Obviously, you're going to need a ton of wounds for the trials to come. For your next talent, take Defensive Stance. If you have not attacked this turn, you're going to gain a percentage bonus to armor equal to 10 plus twice your toughness bonus. Charge and Slash do not affect this bonus. This is going to be very important when we get to the next archetype because a lot of times you're just not going to have enough AP for it to make sense for you to attack, and instead you'll just let enemies attack you. All right, now we've completely maxed out athletics and Medicae. Demolition, it makes most sense for someone who's focusing on agility to be increasing that. And coercion makes most sense for someone focusing on fellowship to increase. So we're just going to go ahead and go with Carouse. And then on the next level, you can't increase weapon skill or toughness anymore. So go ahead and switch over to strength. And now with that +5 increase to strength, it's worth noting that Abelard actually starts with a +10 increase in strength, which means with 5, he's up to 45, and that means you can go ahead and select heavy armor proficiency. And by this time, you should have your first piece of heavy armor, so you can go ahead and put it onto him. The advantage of heavy armor is that it's going to increase your deflection, whereas medium and light armor will not do this, and deflection will flat out deduct damage that hits you. So it's very, very nice for a tank to have. And then for your last Daring Breach upgrade, I like the first option, which is going to give you +10 movement points until the end of your turn, and you do not provoke attacks of opportunity. It's going to help to make sure that when you activate this, you can get to the exact enemy you want Abelard to be able to reach, or the exact group of enemies you want to make sure he attracts the attention of. All right, that is all the talents that we select for warriors. So now it's time to get into Vanguard. This is interesting. We haven't talked about Vanguard for any of the other party members. One of these days, I'll do an officer build that uses Vanguard. I think it's actually got some nice synergy. But this time we're going to go Warrior Vanguard, and it's absolutely fantastic for Abelard. You're going to pick up the Unyielding Beacon feature. And this is triggered when anyone attacks Abelard, and it's going to give him a +1 stack of this bonus. Each stack increases his resolve by +1 up to a maximum of 15. All allies in a 2-cell radius around him gain a fifth of that bonus. Temporary wounds applied to Abelard will now stack, but they only remain stacked until the start of his turn. At the start of his turn, the remaining temporary wounds are reduced to the largest amount granted by one applied effect. However, if the remaining number of temporary wounds is less than the number of unyielding beacon stacks you have, then the temporary wounds will become equal to that amount, even if technically he would have no temporary wounds. So, all in all, this is a fantastic way to benefit from enemies attacking you. So you really want to stack Unyielding Beacon to its max as quickly as possible, so you can get that massive bonus to resolve and get your heroic axe as quickly as possible as well. In that same vein, the first ability we're going to pick up is Defensive Stance. It's going to give you a percentage bonus to parry equal to 10 plus twice the number of Unyielding Beacon stacks you have until your next turn. Whenever you parry an enemy's attack, you'll immediately make an attack of opportunity against that same enemy with a -20 penalty to weapon skill. So what this basically allows you to do is activate Defensive Stance, activate some additional buffs that are going to make sure you can actually stay on your feet, and then just let the enemies come to you and attack you to boost up your Unyielding Beacon stacks while you attack them and take them out that way. So it's basically a completely different style of playing, but it can still be very effective. You do, of course, need to have a strategy for how you're going to deal with ranged enemies. So either your party members need to take them out, or you're going to need to navigate Abelard to those enemies after you deal with the melee ones. But as far as enemies that are close into melee distance, you should keep screaming to draw them to you. Activate Defensive Stance, activate Endure, activate probably Bulwark or one other buff, and then just let them attack you and go to town. To help you even further with that, pick up Dueling Mastery as your next common talent. It's going to give you a 15% bonus to parry. For your first talent, take Taunting Defense. This is going to provide you with a percentage bonus to parry equal to 5 plus twice your toughness bonus against enemies that consider you to be a priority target, which obviously is going to be a ton of enemies. On your next level, you'll get the Unyielding Guard Heroic Act. We're not going to bother talking about it because you should never use this. The warrior option is always going to be the better bet. On the next level, you get an increase to AP. This is absolutely fantastic. It's going to help your action economy. And your ability to increase characteristics has been refreshed, so go ahead and go back to increasing toughness. For your next talent, take Counterattack Stance. It's going to change Defensive Stance so that now you only have a -10 penalty to weapon skill on your attacks of opportunity instead of -20, and your attacks of opportunity are going to deal additional toughness bonus damage. Great all the way around. For your next ability, pick up Bulwark. Until the start of your next turn, you're going to gain damage deflection against ranged attacks equal to the number of stacks of Unyielding Beacon that you have. And remember, that can go up to 15. Additionally, you become immune to push and force movement effects until your next turn. This is absolutely critical. Enemies love to knock you prone when you're standing on the front line, and that could be a death knell for your tank. So you absolutely want this so you can stay on your feet. Next up, your ability to choose skills has been refreshed, so go ahead and take Athletics. For your next talent, take Punish the Imprudent. Once per round, when an enemy that considers you a priority target enters a cell adjacent to you, that enemy provokes an attack of opportunity. I shouldn't need to explain why this is absolutely fantastic. On your next level, pick up Doing My Part. It is going to cause your first use of any abilities from archetypes that other characters in the party do not have to cost 1 action point less. Nobody else in my party is going to be a Vanguard, and I haven't figured out my Iconoclast party yet, but most likely there won't be any other warriors either, so this is going to be absolutely fantastic for Abelard. Next, you can't increase toughness anymore, so go ahead and switch over to weapon skill. And then pick up Power Weapon Expert, which is going to give power weapon attacks an additional 10% armor penetration. So at first in the game, you're just going to give Abelard the best two-handed weapon that you possibly can. You have to kind of make a decision between weapons that do more damage and weapons that have more armor penetration. Personally, I prefer weapons that do more armor penetration because the damage that you get against elites and bosses that are heavily armored is going to be much more consistent. And so, consequently, the final type of weapon that I use for Abelard is a two-handed hammer, and all of those are power weapons. So, you should have a good one by this point, and this talent will definitely help you. For your next talent, take center of attention. For each enemy that considers you a priority target, your armor is going to be increased by 5%. And then for your next talent, take Unyielding Resolve. While at maximum stacks of Unyielding Beacon, the Vanguard gains +7 Resolve. So that's insane. It's going to basically take that +15 you are already getting and bump it up to +22. Absolutely fantastic. Pick this up. Next level, you can't increase athletics anymore, so switch over to Metakai. And you can't increase weapon skill anymore, so switch over to strength. For your next ability, these bottom three are all related to you having high fellowship levels, so it's related to you being an officer. So the only thing that makes sense is Wall of Rockcrete. This only really makes sense if you have other allies that are also going to be in melee distance. Basically, if allies are within a 3-cell radius of you, they're going to gain temporary wounds equal to 3 plus your number of unyielding beacon stacks, and they're going to take 50% less damage from the next attack. So if you have other off tanks that aren't as tanky as you are, this is fantastic. But if you don't, it does cost 2 action points. So it's really a huge sacrifice to use this. It doesn't do a whole lot for Abelard. So if you're trying to make him your main damage dealer or the anchor point of your team, I don't think it makes sense to use this on a regular basis. For your next talent, take Enduring Shield. While the Vanguard has at least 1 temporary wound, which of course should be happening all the time, they gain a percentage bonus to parry and armor equal to 5 plus your toughness bonus. Fantastic. For your next talent, take Renitent Beacon. Each stack of Unyielding Beacon additionally increases armor and parry by 1%. So of course this will go up to 15%. I didn't feel like it was worth taking early on, but it's definitely something you want to make sure that you pick up before the end. It's going to be a nice boost over time. On your next turn, take Grenadier. Your first grenade used in combat does not spend action points and does not count towards the attack limit that turn. He's going to be on the front line, so there will definitely be opportunities to go ahead and use this. All right, now you are an Exemplar, so by this time you should be an absolute monster, an impenetrable tank with sky-high temporary wounds. Absolutely fantastic stuff. As always, there's a link in the description to my walkthrough of all the options I took for this build, including all of the selections I made for Exemplar. There are also links to my videos walking through the mechanics for both Warrior and Vanguard if you want to see more of that. The only thing that I'll mention for Exemplar is the first option I believe you should take is Martyrdom, which when your character is attacked by an enemy, they're going to gain momentum equal to the difficulty tier of the attacking creature. This should help to shoot your momentum sky high and allow you to activate heroic acts even faster. So absolutely great stuff. Now, as far as the gear that I had on Abelard, I only used him really up through, I think maybe halfway of Act 3, but I still kept up with his gear just in case I needed to switch him back in. So for his helmet, he's got Helm of Determination. You can only use this if you have a Conviction rating and Iconoclast, but that's what he specializes in, so that's no problem. And it's going to give him a percentage bonus to armor equal to twice his Fellowship bonus. And the helmet also grants a bonus to Fellowship ranking equal to twice his Iconoclast rank. So it's all right, not crazy for his particular build. It would mean a lot more if he was an officer, but not bad to have. And then for the necklace, Grace of the Oblivious, it's going to grant him a +5 bonus to toughness as long as his intelligence is less than 35, which it is. And of course, the more toughness, the better for us. And then for his heavy armor, it grants him 65% armor, 5 armor deflection. And of course, it's going to reduce his dodge. And it's going to give him +3 deflection against melee attacks. So he'll have 9 deflection minimum against melee attacks. Great stuff. And then for the first ring slot, it's going to give him additional temporary wounds from combat stimulants equal to his Carouse divided by 20. And the first use of any combat stimulant per turn costs 0 action points. So this lets him just use these injections constantly whenever he wants to for no penalty. Very nice. Now he also gets Heart of the Nameless, which causes his lower Xenos to increase by 10. But more importantly, if he has Iconoclast Adherent, it increases all of his skills by 10 instead. He has that rank, so it gives him a nice bonus to all of his skills. For his gloves, he has the Radiant Gloves, which gives him a +5 bonus to parry reduction. And because he has Conviction Iconoclast, all allies gain hit chance percentage equal to 10 plus twice his Iconoclast rank against enemies that are adjacent to him, and he automatically dodges allies' melee attacks. So this is really, really cool to have, especially if you have other allies who are going to be running in and doing area attacks with their melee weapon. So really cool stuff. For the cape, whenever he deals damage with a melee attack, he's going to gain temporary wounds equal to his toughness bonus plus 3 times his Iconoclast level. And remember, unlike other classes, temporary wounds is going to stack for the Vanguard until the start of his next turn. And his attacks are going to deal an additional amount of damage equal to half of his temporary wounds. Obviously, this is fantastic for Abelard. It's really going to help give him a nice bonus to damage. And then for the boots, it gives him a +5 bonus to agility, irrelevant, but it also gives him a +10 bonus to athletics, which is all right. He already gets plenty of athletics, so this isn't crazy, but not bad to have. And then for his weapon, he's got Roaring Thunder. It does up to 25 damage, does 40% armor penetration. It's got a Ground Slam attack that he can do to multiple enemies. And the hammer deals +3 damage and grants +10% stacking chance to stun an enemy for 1 turn for each point of the enemy's deflection. So against really, really tough enemies, Abelard's weapon becomes even tougher. Really nice. And of course, a successful toughness resistance test will negate this effect, but it's definitely still nice to have. And then finally, it's good to have an alternative weapon for him when he needs a ranged option. I like using the arc rifle for him. Gives him something different. So when you hit an enemy with the arc rifle, you're also going to attack any enemy within 2 cells of the target. So when a bunch of ranged enemies are huddled around and they're taking pot shots at him, he's able to use this to basically do some more damage and not have to wait for the rest of the team. And that's it. That's the build. That's what I used for Abelard for most of my game. I found it to be very, very effective. So for those of you who really want to tank and really love the idea of having the big burly guy who can run in and handle business, hopefully this works for you. Definitely looking forward to hearing your feedback in the comments below. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Take care.